Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News this Sunday, the 28th day of September, 2025. And here's what's in the headlines at the moment. Donald Trump says Gaza deal is in the final stages. We're almost there, he said, after stating something special is coming to the Middle East. This is from the Jerusalem Post. So the more he talks, the more he says we're right around the corner. It's almost there. On the other hand, also from the Jerusalem Post, Benjamin Netanyahu says nothing has been finalized on Trump's ceasefire plan. So you got the one hand, but President Trump saying we're almost there, it's going to happen. We're going to find out right away what it's all about. It's coming to the Middle East, and Netanyahu says, well, nothing's been finalized. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. And this is where we're at. This keeps going this way all day, by the way. JD Vance, Vice President, says a Gaza deal is close, but very complicated negotiation could still be derailed. He's not as optimistic as Trump. This is from Fox News and Israel National News. And then to add to the misery, Hamas claims it lost communication with the Gaza group who is holding two of the hostages. So it just gets, worse and worse for the hostage family, for the people of Israel wanting this to end. And who knows what's going to happen? Well, here's where we're at right now as things continue to, change by the hour. Donald Trump says Gaza deal is in its final stages after stating something special is coming to the Middle East. We have a real chance for greatness in the Middle East. Get this now. All are on board for something special. First time ever, we will get it done. He said this today on Truth Social. He posted that on his social media account. U.S. President Donald Trump said negotiations over his plan to end the war in Gaza are at their final stages and asserted that a deal could open the way for a wider peace in the Middle East. It's from Axios reporting this tonight, Sunday night. Earlier on Sunday, just days after saying he was close to forging a deal to end the war in Gaza, Trump stated that there's a real chance for greatness in the Middle East on his social media platform, but he didn't provide specific details. Again, he says all are on board. Get this, all are on board for something special. First time ever, we will get it done. Remember, Hamas has said we haven't even seen it. Today they said that we haven't even seen this plan. So how do we know what it is? And Netanyahu, as we're going to see, has said that we're still looking at it. And it's interesting. When we get to Netanyahu's version of what's going on, it's going to be fascinating to see. Anyway, Trump says negotiations are at the final stages. We have a real chance for greatness. All are on board for something special. First time ever, we'll get it done. He keeps repeating phrases like that he said in his post. Well, we will see. But here we go with Benjamin Netanyahu, also from the Jerusalem Post, says nothing is finalized on Trump's ceasefire plan. U.S. President Donald Trump's 21-point Gaza ceasefire plan has not been finalized yet, but Israel is working with Trump's staff to advance the plan. This is what Netanyahu said in an interview with Fox News today on Sunday. He said, we're currently working with President Trump's team on the 21-point agreement. We hope to successfully advance the deal. And of course, the two leaders are scheduled to meet tomorrow at the White House. During the interview, Netanyahu confirmed that Israel would be willing to allow Hamas leaders to leave Gaza, and that's one that a lot of people objected to, in exchange for the release of the remaining 48 hostages and an end to the war. We want to free the hostages and for Gaza to be demilitarized. If the plan were to be agreed upon, the war would end in 48 hours with all 48 hostages released and the IDF withdrawal. Other points in the 21-point plan include the immediate provision of aid and Israel's promise not to strike Qatar again. Well, that's how it stands from Trump's point of view. Now, whether Netanyahu is for that or not, we just don't know. When asked whether he regretted the Israeli Air Force strikes on Qatar, given the regional implications, Netanyahu replied, I think the U.S. and any self-respecting country doesn't give a pass to terrorists. We weren't attacking Qatar any more than the U.S. was attacking Pakistan when it took out Osama bin Laden. That's a good point. Netanyahu also dismissed claims that the strikes on Qatar would negatively impact the Abraham Accords, especially with the UAE. He called the accords brokered by him and President Trump during his first term as resilient. The Israeli leader also doubled down on his promise not to let Iran weaponize its uranium. He claimed that before the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities in June, Israel had been aware that it would not get all 450 kilos of enriched uranium, but that it wanted to prevent Iran from making more and from weaponizing it. He also claimed Israel is aware of the location of Iran's remaining nuclear sites. Now, we have a couple of huge stories on Iran, but we can't get to them during this edition of Breaking News. We plan on doing them first thing in the morning because they have some very important things to do with the last days Bible prophecy. But these are the ones right now that demand our immediate attention. Then he says this: the responsibility lies at the feet of Hamas. He denied that Israel carried out or is carrying out a mass starvation in Gaza. There was never a starvation policy in Gaza, and there never will be. And so he talked about the pictures of terrorists with their shirts off during when they're arrested by Israelis. These people are all buffed up. They've been eating very well. You won't see a single emaciated person among the Hamas prisoners that we take. He also echoed the previous Israeli statistics of 2-to-1 combatant to civilian ratio in terms of a death toll, saying we're taking a lot of care not to hurt civilians. All right, so this is what the Netanyahu has said today. And so where we're at right now, it's going back and forth. There's other websites saying similar things, basically that they're working together. Netanyahu's working with the Trump administration to try and forge something so they can have something. But it's kind of hard to understand. It would be interesting to see how it all turns out with all the details, because so many of them, as we've seen, are very much anti-Israel that Israel certainly can't go for. So we will just wait and see. Now, J.D. Vance, this one is interesting. I wanted to bring this up for a variety of reasons. He said Gaza deal is very close, but complicated negotiation could still be derailed. This is from Fox News and Israel National News. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says the Trump administration is at the 1-yard line with its Gaza peace plan and is very optimistic about the chances for punching it through into the end zone. Give a football analogy. Well, acknowledging things could get derailed at the last minute. His comments to Fox News were slightly more cautious as the ones that came from Trump, as we see, obviously, who told reporters, I think we have a deal. And earlier he wrote, we all are on board. And of course, as the article states, Israel's yet to sign off on the proposal, and Hamas hasn't even been presented it yet, according to source familiar with the matter. And then we saw today also, remember, Arab countries have submitted recommended edits to the 21-point plan that they were presented last week. And the U.S. is expected to finalize their proposal today, Sunday. Well, that's a new story. So supposedly today they're going to finalize it, and we'll see where all this ends. Trump acknowledged last week he'll have to meet with Netanyahu before the plan can be finalized, and that's scheduled tomorrow. It's a complicated negotiation happening right now between Israelis, between the Trump administration led by Envoy Witkoff and Secretary of State Rubio, Vance told Fox News. The conversations are happening as we speak. They're ongoing over the course of the past couple of days. He said U.S. proposal accomplishes Washington's 3 goals. And here's according to Washington's 3 goals: releasing the hostages, making sure Hamas is no longer a terror threat, and ensuring that aid can enter Gaza for the many innocent people who are caught up in the conflict. The Fox News reported and incorrectly claims that Trump said earlier this week that he would not allow Gaza to be controlled by Israel, but apparently referring to the president's assertion that he would not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. Now, this is really interesting. The next thing we're going to read from J.D. Vance. Vance responds to the question by saying that Trump, quote, wants Gaza to be controlled by the people who live there. He wants the West Bank to be controlled by the people who live there. And he wants the terrorist networks that are around the Israelis to be dismantled so they no longer can pose a threat to Israel. Now, this last paragraph was very problematic to a lot of the readers of the Jerusalem Post article, and I've got some comments here. I want to read to you how they see this last paragraph, these last few statements by J.D. Vance. Here's what one person said. If I recall, the people who live there have constantly voted in terrorist parties to lead them. Has anything changed that I'm not aware of? Of course, the answer is no. It's being facetious. They've all voted in. Remember, the Palestinian Authority in 2006 took over Gaza. The next year, the people voted in Hamas. And so they're there because the people voted them in. And so J.D. Vance's statement, it wants to be controlled by the people who live there. Well, they are, and they have been for 19 years. Okay, the next one response. I will insist again on the following, for I think it's better to be prepared for what's coming, Vance said. He, Trump, wants the West Bank to be controlled by the people who live there. And the writer of the comment says it means that a Palestinian state is already being considered by Trump. Well, it sounds like it, doesn't it? And then another commenter said this: thanks, President Carlson. Oops, I mean Trump. And with respect to Tucker Carlson, this is very important, this last paragraph, what this one commentator wrote. Sad to say, but in recent weeks, Trump's message on the Middle East has shifted in a notable way. He seems to be aligning with Tucker Carlson and his growing ilk, who continues to have enormous influence. As an aside, and I didn't know this, Tucker's son is JD's deputy press secretary. I didn't know that. Tucker Carlson's son is the deputy press secretary for JD Vance. And the writer said it's deeply disturbing. The fact that the Trump administration continues to legitimize Qatar in itself has been a long-standing problem. But again, more recently, the message and the tenor is not good, not good at all. On the right, there is a rising tide of Christian nationalism that often cloaks anti-Semitism. Now, we've talked about something like this. There's a variety of names for it. Christian nationalism. It's more like God and country nationalism, not necessarily Christian. And like I've mentioned before, I grew up in an area in Orange County, California, in the 1960s, where everybody was conservative, everybody was God and country person, but they're the most anti-Semitic, anti-Jew people you've ever seen in your life. And there's a lot of people like that out there, and this is what the commentator is saying, as an Israeli commentator. But they're picking that up, that so-called Christians, are anti-Semitic and in their behavior, like Tucker Carlson. But again, just because someone claims to be a Christian or a God-fearing person certainly doesn't make them a Christian. And the Bible certainly opposes anti-Semitism in all forms, as we've talked about. So interesting. J.D. Vance is a very good man. I like most of the stuff he does, but his response to Israel has not always been good. And it's very problematic when he says Gaza and the West Bank needs to be ruled by those who live there. That would mean the Palestinian or the Palestinian Authority. Well, we see what happens when they are ruled by them. They want to destroy the nation of Israel. So anyway, that's for whatever it's worth. We wanted to bring that story out. Then finally, to make matters worse, Hamas claims it's lost all communication with the Gaza group holding the two hostages. Remember, in Gaza, there's a number of terroristic groups, Islamic Jihad, Hamas, and others that are holding hostages. And they claim that there's one group that's holding two of the hostages they've lost communication with. The terror group also called on Israel to halt air missions for 24 hours to save the hostages from danger. They claim they lost the communication as a result of Israeli operations in a statement they made Sunday. And says within the last 48 hours, this group has two hostages. And due to the barbaric military operations, we've lost contact with this group. So we don't know how the hostages are doing. And then called on Israel to immediately retreat to the south of Street 8, whatever that is, and stop air sorties for 24 hours starting at 6 o'clock this evening until Hamas could rescue the two hostages. In other words, they want to rescue them for the area these hostages are in, according to Hamas. Last week, the terror group's military wing, the Izzadin al-Qassam brigades, stated that it would not concern itself with the lives of the hostages in Gaza so long as Israel's campaign against the terror group continues, CNN reported at the time. Your prisoners are distributed within the neighborhoods of Gaza City, and we will not be concerned for their lives as long as Netanyahu has decided to kill them, the brigade said. All right, bottom line is this. These evil people with Hamas say and do whatever they can to bring about the most misery to the people of Israel, the Jews, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They hate them. They want to see them destroyed. And sadly, and here's the real sad part, there's so many people now that are supporting them and thinking they're the underdog. They're the ones who are the victims in all this, and they're just striking back against the mean Israelis. And it's really a terrible situation. So this is where we're at right now. But like we said, everything is up in the air. It will all depend on what comes about tomorrow from Prime Minister Netanyahu's meeting with President Trump, what they will say, if there's a press conference, what this agreement, if they make an agreement, what it's going to end up looking like. Because as Netanyahu said, nothing's been finalized yet. They have five major issues that they say must take place, must be guaranteed for us to make a deal with Hamas. And as those 21 points go, those 5 points of Israel are not in them. So we will see. And again, it's something that it's a situation. It's fluid. It's up in the air. It's a matter of flux. And so we'll just let you know tomorrow when we know something. And like we said, we've got a couple of major stories about Iran too, what's going on there, the possibility of the overthrow of the government there, of the Ayatollahs and the mullahs there, and with replacing with the Shah's oldest son, Reza Pahlavi. There's a real movement towards that. And it's getting more and more to be a real possibility. And we'll talk about how we know this and why that's so. Anyway, that's for tomorrow. Until then, I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. Until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.